Good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? I am immensely pleased to introduce Allison Scott, our second short talk speaker for this session. Allison is presenting Resilience in Philanthropy, in which she will unpack the growing waves of anti-trans legislation and how Southern grassroots organizations are leading national efforts to protect trans rights. Allison is a fifth-generation Southerner, an out trans woman, who serves as Director of Impact and Innovation at the Campaign for Southern Equality. Blending a background in IT and grassroots activism, she develops innovative strategies to advance LGBTQ rights and direct resources to communities across the South. Her work has been recognized nationally, including collaborations with federal agencies and features in major media outlets. Can we all give a hand to Allison?
Thank you. Good morning. 1,200, 1,200. That's how many families that we are helping right now with gender-affirming care as care bans have swept through our country. 806,000, big number. That's how much money we have given to these families to help them travel, to put into patient care funds, to pay for that care once they get there, and to make sure that their needs are being met. Zero. That's what we started with in 2022 when these bans started. We had 0 families, $0 for this program. You see, when I was first looking at this conference and was asked to speak here, I really had a different vision of what I wanted to talk about when I talk about resilience. The idea was to talk about how the Campaign for Southern Equality has pivoted our work to meet this new need. You see, direct services isn't something we do at CSE. It's never been our theme. We're a legal advocacy organization for LGBTQ rights. In fact, our legal team defeated Amendment 1 for marriage equality right here in North Carolina, 2014. They went on to win that same battle in Mississippi the following year. That's the kind of work that we've always done. We show up for community. We pivot our work and we work on whatever the pressing issue is to get it done. But here's this scrappy organization in Asheville, North Carolina. And for any of you that have moved here in the last few years, that would be west of Charlotte, Raleigh, and Hickory. Here's an organization that has been working for years on different issues. But we had to pivot. And what is that resilience? How does that show up? I thought about talking about our staff and how their resilience as LGBTQ individuals, as trans individuals, how that shows up day to day to help them with this work and with this fight. I thought about talking about the resilience of our organization and what does it mean when the whole world seems like it's imploding and everyone's coming after you. And when I was going to talk about that, I was going to talk about our Trans Youth Emergency Project, which is the program that's responding to these trans healthcare bans for youth. As I said, we never have done direct services. That wasn't our thing. But we saw this coming. We started talking about it in 2021, that the next battle was going to be the legal rights and statewide bans for trans health care. Sure enough, 2022, they started happening. We watched as state after state after state pass these bans. We watched as politicians who had previously been very vocal about fighting for trans rights started falling silent. We watched as organizations that had stood up to HB2 here in North Carolina and proclaimed that bigotry and had no place in our state, that their employees, their staff, maybe their customers, you name it, they were all at danger to let these kinds of policies and practices be enacted. Now they fall silent. We watch as those same companies and organizations erase DEI, immigration issues, trans health care, or frankly, anything that might feel a little heated, all from their websites. The same companies and organizations that stood up and boldly said that we are better with diversity is not about lifting up small populations. It's about how do we empower our company, our organizations, our staff, and our communities. Those comments are erased from their website like they were never there. And I get it. I know it's hard. We started talking to hospital systems and asking them what their plans were for their trans healthcare programs. Many of them were worried that they were going to have to discontinue them. It was just too risky. It was too much. And I understand that. I worked in the corporate world. I know what in-house legal counsel tells us. Some of you may be having these conversations right now inside your own organization. Your in-house legal counsel will tell you, here's what we can defend. It's not how does this impact our mission? How does this impact our organization? How does it impact our staff, our communities, or the people we're serving? It's what we can defend. When we talk about that impact and how it erases our organizational missions, it erases our staff, it erases our community, we get in this place of defensiveness. That isn't what really resilience is about. Our staff at CSE built a program unlike anyone else at this scale. There were a lot of orgs doing this on smaller scales, but to do something at this level was something kind of actually. We took a program and recognized that this was a national crisis. We took that and we scaled it to 27 states that have now enacted trans healthcare bans. That's huge. Here's this organization responding to a national crisis in a national way. We didn't back down. We didn't fold in the face of pressure because our mission was for the impact of lived and legal equality. We were watching lived equality fall to the wayside. The most basic rights of health care just shut down because of opinion, because of panic, and frankly, just lies and falsehoods. It was a few months ago. This was an interesting point because after the inauguration, a lot of people were like, what comes next? What are we going to do? What's going to happen? You could feel that tension, that building up organizationally in communities. People were just waiting because we all know things are going to change with any presidential election and changeover. But everybody knew this one felt different. But just like in 2021 at CSE, we said, what is going to happen? What's going to come? And we sat down and we started basically tearing apart our Trans Youth Emergency Project and looking at it and framing it in a different light of what can we defend against the same way your in-house counsel might, but also with the framework of our mission of making sure that we don't forget the very people we're going to serve just to protect ourselves. That's a scary, scary place to be. Resilience taught us that. When we were sitting in this room, my executive director, the comms director, and myself, we basically just holed up in our office for like 2 weeks straight. It was like 8-10 hours a day. We were getting on each other's nerves. I'm really, really glad and proud that my coworkers, the way they showed up. Because if you're gonna have some organizational discomfort, it's gonna come about when you have these kinds of strategy sessions and you start talking about the impacts it's gonna have on your staff. Maybe some of you are going through that right now. Talking about federal funding being cut, maybe how programs might have to be cut off, maybe how philanthropy is not showing up and they're pulling back themselves. What does it look like for your organization? We had to struggle with that. And we knew the only way to do that was by always falling back on what are our values. So those 1,200 families, and growing, by the way, every single day, how can we protect them and keep showing up for them? Our staff, we are the population we serve. I say this like every Monday in our staff meeting. I remind all our staff, we are literally the population we're serving. More than half our staff is trans, non-binary, half is racial diversity, gender diversity, you name it. We are an incredibly diverse staff, and we are the ones under attack, but yet we're also the ones fighting, and that's hard. So how do we protect our staff? And also, how do we protect our organization? I don't think that is a easy thing just to throw away. You know, when people start talking about these really hard times and attacks, and I think it can be really easy for people to judge and say, well, you should just do what's right. Well, that's a tough decision. When I'm talking to these hospitals and we're saying, what are you going to do with your healthcare programs? And many of them say, we're going to have to stop. I get it. That's a hard decision. When you're sitting there talking about federal funding and you're having NICU wings, you're having cancer wings, and you're trying to figure out how to take care of everyone, it can seem like a zero-sum game where you have to start cutting things back to protect more people. It's what hospitals do. Triaging is kind of in their nature. But there's ramifications to it. When we looked at that organizationally, we recognize that there's a difference for us. And this is what I encourage everyone to look at. Look at your organization. Because when you're under attack, especially statewide, state-sponsored attacks from your governments, from your states, from the federal government, you fall into fear, you fall into doing what you know versus not knowing what to do. With us, we knew that protecting all of these people was critical. So we sat there, we were strategizing. It was really great, Julie, you'd love it. We were like moving the framework around. We were talking about all these things. And while we were doing that, we had our legal counsel on conference calls every day. And they kept saying, here's what we can defend. Here's what we can defend. Here's what we can defend. And we kept saying, why do you care? Because what we're doing is legal. There's nothing wrong with it. We're just giving information. We're helping people travel in a country that supposedly that is still legal, not for many people. We were doing everything by the book, even though executive orders were coming out, kind of like those tickets on the whack-a-mole machine at my kid's birthday party. Like it was, it's amazing. How do you keep up with this? Our lawyers are telling us we have to maybe slow this down. Maybe we have to pause it. We push back on that narrative because we didn't have to make that hard decision about shutting down maybe a NICU. We didn't have to make those decisions, and most organizations don't, quite frankly. People aren't laying on the operating table in most of your organizations, your companies. No one's going to die if you stop a program or pause it or keep it going. And I think that's what we forget when times get really hard and people in our community can be the teachers and the leaders for everyone else. We've been on the front lines of this for years. I love that Julie said that if you talk to people on the front lines, they will tell you that this stress has always been here. It has. I'm a fifth-generation Southerner. I've been fighting against narratives of bigotry and this old-timey thinking of the South is backwards, and it's the home of racism. It's the home of just backwards people. This isn't true. That is a lie. I fought that my whole life. How many of you have moved here, maybe to North Carolina or Charlotte or in the South within the last 5 years from outside of the area? Seeing a few people raise their hands. Now, you don't have to answer this. This goes for everyone. How many of you hear all the time, it must be really hard living in the South? It's really hard living in this country. This is not a Southern problem. It never has been. It's like racism. It's like gender diversity and weaponizing gender stereotypes against women. It's against reproductive rights. Those aren't Southern problems. Those are the United States of America's problems. Since the founding of this country, it didn't start in the South. It will not end in the South. But for those of us that have been here fighting it, I think you can learn a lot from us. How do you pivot when things get really stressful? You take that moment to learn the lessons of your past. Maybe some of you from your own identity, maybe from traumas in your life and childhood. Maybe you learned some lessons about how do I pivot in this moment? What has helped me before? As a trans woman who came out really early in childhood, I lived in generational Appalachian poverty in Western North Carolina. There goes those biases, right? Y'all are thinking already. There's pictures, there's Saturday Night Live skits, all those things. Some are true. No one was ever on my side. My own parents weren't on my side. It was weaponized against me. More threats against my life from my own parents than even outside of my home. In my school, you name it. Everywhere in my life, I've been facing that. I learned really quickly that I'm not for everyone. And that's okay. I don't care. I don't have to be. And I think our organizations sometimes don't take that lesson to heart. You don't have to be for everyone. You don't have to make everyone happy. Are you doing what's true to your mission? Are you listening to your staff? Are you listening to your communities? And I'm not saying you can fight every fight. It's sad. This is something else we talk about every day at CSE, or virtually every day. It's much like a food line. There's starving people everywhere, and we can only feed the people showing up to that. We all want to feed everyone in the world, and we want to solve everything. But we would fail as an organization, we would burn out as individuals, and we watch people and orgs doing this all the time because they're not living what has made them successful in the past. That's resilience. You learn from your lessons, you go to what you've learned over the years, and you use those tools to think about this in a different way. Instead of thinking as these are new issues, or how do we defend against an attack? Change the rules. Flip the board over. Trans people have been doing that for years. We don't care. We don't care about societal norms. So when we get attacks from the government, sometimes we have to look at those and go, so what? What's the big deal? What if we keep doing what we're doing? You don't get to make the rules all the time. This isn't a law. We're not breaking any laws, but we don't even need to respond to it. It's noise. It's just noise. And it's going to distract you. It's going to traumatize your organization and your staff, and you're going to have a lot of failures if you do that. And I think that's the most important lesson, in my opinion, from a person being an organization, is you have to just slow it down and recognize there's not an operating table with somebody going to die if you don't make the right decision in 2 seconds. Don't fall for the tricks. Don't fall into this trap of just listening to everyone and everything is an emergency and we always have to fix everything. Sometimes you just have to fix what's in front of you. I'm an optimistic person at heart, which is ironic because my past, my history, and my life has taught me that the state, policing, you name it, nothing is on my side. Institutions, everything has been against me my whole life. I have concrete examples of that. But I'm optimistic that it can get better and it can change. And that comes from resilience. I changed my life to accept who I was and to live authentically. I got myself out of Appalachian poverty, generational poverty and trauma, bigotry, you name it. I went on to school, breaking these Southern narratives that were slow, and because we have accents, we must be stupid. Electronics engineering and computer science. I worked in the corporate world, and I watched people assume all kinds of things about me because of the way I looked or the way I spoke. My resilience shows up in every part of my life, and it shows up in our organization from our staff members. I want to encourage everyone here to go back and start looking at your orgs, at your missions, at whatever you're doing from a different place of fear. Throw that out. Look at it from how to be resilient and how to learn from the things in our lives that have taught us the most critical lessons. Thank you.